This is the MSI Raider GE76, which came out at the start of 2022. But is it still worth it? Jumping straight into the spec sheets, I can tell you that it's definitely still worth it. With its Core i7-12700H, 32GB of 4800MHz DDR5 RAM, its massive 17.3-inch 1080p 360Hz panel, its RTX 3070 Ti, its 1TB NVMe SSD, and its 99.9 Wh battery, this laptop still ain't lacking. Its port selection isn't lacking either. On the left side you get a single Type A port, a Type C port that supports DisplayPort, and a headphone jack. Flipping over to the other side, you get another 2 USB ports and an SD card reader. Moving on to the back is a mini DisplayPort, a Thunderbolt 4 port, an Ethernet port, a HDMI port, and lastly a charging port. The GE76 itself is an unassuming design, with sleek looking contours and lots of metal accents and chamfers all around. However, there is a nice RGB strip on the front of the laptop which I'll get to later. The GE76 is pretty heavy, weighing in at 2.9 kilograms, and a 17.3 inch size means this laptop could be pretty hard to lug around. The lid does open with one finger though, and now is a good time to talk about that RGB strip. It's a nice diffused strip with loads of little RGB LEDs inside, which can be customized in the SteelSeries software. I think this is a nice little touch that doesn't intrude on the rest of the design and is facing towards you. Lid flex is also minimal thanks to that metal design. The keyboard has full RGB per key lighting, which can be fully customized in the SteelSeries software. The keyboard itself is fine, but I was expecting a little better. I also found some of the buttons like the slide key were larger than expected, and I found myself clicking them more often than not while typing. The font was also disgusting. I wish laptop companies and keyboard companies for that matter would just put some normal fonts on their keyboards. However, deck flex was very minimal, again thanks to that metal chassis, and the keyboard area was comfortable to type on, minus some of the enlarged keys. On the other hand, the trackpad is pretty small for my liking. Don't get me wrong, it tracks pretty well and is fine for most tasks, but is tiny considering this is a 17.3 inch laptop. Moving on, the speakers sound pretty great. They get pretty loud as the laptop comes with a dual situated subwoofer, so it's safe to say that the speaker system is excellent. Just listen. Next, let's talk about that display. As mentioned before, this particular model comes with a 17.3 inch 1080p 360Hz panel. It gets pretty bright with some decent colors and is pretty sharp, but the real standout here is of course its 360Hz refresh rate, which is honestly all you will ever need for gaming. It's mind-bending how smooth it is and will be seriously good for some esports titles on the go. Moving on, the laptop comes with a standard 30fps 1080p webcam, which is fine for most use cases and probably the best I've seen on a gaming laptop.
The microphone you get here also sounds pretty good and would be perfect for Zoom calls or whatever you like to do.
Last but not least, the wall charger at 280 watts charges the GE76's 99.9 Wh battery in around 3 hours. Now, battery life on the GE76 was pretty surprising, lasting around 7 hours and 14 minutes while idle, and around 6 hours and 11 minutes while playing back video, beating the Z13. Keep in mind both these laptops are on their maximum power saving modes, with all RGB turned off on full screen brightness, and you will get less battery while gaming or working, so keep that in mind. In terms of power, the GE76's 12700H peaks at around 68 watts in Cinebench, and about the same at 68 watts again in Spider-Man. Surprisingly, this is only temporary, as the CPU immediately thermal throttled in both Cinebench R23 and Spider-Man, significantly degrading performance. The CPU reaches an outlandish 99 degrees Celsius in Cinebench and 96 degrees in Spider-Man before quickly thermal throttling. These high CPU temperatures are most definitely due to the restricted air ventilation at the bottom, which keeps the two fans from getting fresh air. I seriously thought the thermals were going to be far better, especially since this thing has 6 heat pipes. It's quite disappointing to say the least. On the other hand, the GPU is a bit more under control, peaking at around 152 watts in Spider-Man, which is a bit over its limit, while only reaching 74 degrees. Since we're on the subject of thermals, let's talk about noise. Under load, this thing gets crazy loud, just listen. Moving on to the benchmarking. Starting in PugetBench in Photoshop, we see the GE76 score around 1152 points, which is 17% higher than the Z13, while in After Effects it got around 1025 points, beating the Z13 by an impressive 33%. Lastly, in Premiere Pro, the GE76 scores around 894, beating the Z13 by again around 33%. Next in Procyon Office, the GE76 scores 8031 points in Excel, scoring slightly lower than the Z13 by around 2%. In Word, we see an even bigger loss in score, with the GE76 scoring 6300, or around 19% less than the Z13. This decrease in performance is where we're seeing the difference in single-threaded performance between the 12900H and the 12700H. The small performance difference in Excel is due to the similar FPU or double precision floating point performance between the chips. However, in PowerPoint this is a different story, with the GE76 pulling ahead of the Z13 by around 2%, scoring 6972 points. Next in Blender, starting with the more bursty BMW render, the GE76 took 156 seconds to complete the render, which is 8% faster than the Z13, while in Classroom it took 375 seconds to complete the render, which is again 11% faster than the Z13. In the long Chromium compile benchmark, the GE76 took 6,386.679 seconds to complete, which is 4% lower than the Z13. In Cinebench R23, the GE76 in multi-core scores 11,671, which is 13% fewer points than the Z13, while in single core it scored 1,802, which is again 6% fewer points than the Z13. In 3D Mark Time Spy, the GE76 scores 11,806 points, which is 159% higher than the Z13, while in the wildlife test, the GE76 gets 162% more at 67,279 points. That 3070 Ti coming in hot. Finally, in the 3D Mark storage test, the GE76 scores 2,790 points, which is 92% higher than the Z13. Moving on to CSGO high settings, the GE76 averages 434 FPS with 1% lows of 116 FPS and 0.1% lows of 88 FPS. That's pretty impressive, as you're getting above the 360Hz refresh rate, which is awesome. In Cyberpunk 2077, at medium to low settings with DLSS off, the GE76 gets an average of 118 FPS with 1% lows of 66 FPS and 0.1% lows of 54 FPS. I was expecting it to be a little higher, but it's still playable. In Forza Horizon 5 on the medium preset, we see the GE76 get 89 FPS on average, while 1% lows are at 41 FPS, with a pretty disappointing 32 FPS on 0.1% lows. Again, I was expecting this to be a lot higher. In Rainbow Six Siege on the low preset, the GE76 gets around 332 FPS on average, with 1% lows of 235 FPS and 0.1% lows of 126 FPS. Of course, this is a playable experience, but it's pretty disappointing to see frame rates below the display's refresh rate, especially at these settings. Lastly, in Spider-Man Remastered, with the very low preset and ray tracing off, we see a decent average of 161 FPS, with 1% lows of 78 FPS and 0.1% lows of only 2 FPS. Overall, the GE76 performs well, with the 3070 Ti coming in clutch, giving it a lead in productivity applications like Premiere Pro and decent gaming performance. However, the CPU did experience thermal throttling in most, if not all of the tests, again due to the restricted air vents. The overall feel and build quality of the laptop is fantastic, again with lots of metal accents. There was minimal overall lid and deck flex, and the keyboard was again decent to type on, aside from a few keys that were a bit enlarged. The trackpad was too small for my taste, but it is adequate. There's also a large number of ports, and the battery life was pretty good, which means this could be a contender for a serious mobile workstation / gaming battle station. But the real question is, would I recommend buying it? For around $2,700 USD, I would say yes and no. This laptop is, as I said, meant to be a desktop replacement given its size and weight. If you like most of the performance of a desktop within its class in a laptop form, then go for it. But do you know what else you should go for? Our sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning platform that lets you learn whatever you want, whenever you want. From growing your business portfolio to photography, you name it, Skillshare's got it. I personally am brushing up on my Photoshop skills with Jeremy Mura's Photoshop Masterclass for graphic designers. Learn how to get a whole month of Skillshare for free by using the link in the video description below. Thanks Skillshare. Anyway, that's all for now. Don't forget to watch this video on the most powerful gaming tablet.